All right, so you think you know noodles? You've boiled them, you've stirred them, maybe you've even burned a pot or two. But I promise you, after watching this video, you'll never look at a simple pack of noodles the same way again. Today, we're counting down 31 of the cleverest Chinese noodle hacks ever developed. Some have been perfected over thousands of years, while others are modern shortcuts almost nobody outside China knows about. Number 31. Use cold water to stop the cooking process instantly. Here's something Chinese home cooks do automatically that most Americans skip entirely. The moment your noodles finish cooking, drain them and immediately rinse them under cold running water. This is not just about stopping the cooking. The cold water shocks the starches on the surface of the noodle, which tightens the outer layer and gives you that satisfying, chewy bite that makes great noodles so distinct from mushy ones. It also washes off excess surface starch, which means your noodles will not clump together in the bowl. For cold noodle dishes especially, this step is absolutely non-negotiable. Number 30. Salt your water, but do it at the right moment. Most people know to salt pasta water, but Chinese cooks have a more precise approach. Add your salt only after the water reaches a full rolling boil, not before. When you salt cold or warm water, the salt dissolves but sits at the bottom. When you salt already boiling water, it distributes evenly throughout the entire pot almost immediately. This gives you more consistent seasoning from the first bite to the last. Use about 1 teaspoon of salt per 4 cups of water for fresh wheat noodles and slightly less for rice noodles, which are more delicate. Number 29. Toast your noodles before boiling them. This one sounds strange, but it absolutely works. Take your dry noodles, whether they are so-min, ramen bricks, or thin rice vermicelli, and toss them in a dry pan over medium heat for about 2 to 3 minutes before dropping them in boiling water. The heat causes a mild Maillard reaction on the surface of the noodle, which adds a subtle nuttiness and depth of flavor that no sauce can replicate. Chinese street vendors in northern regions do this with dry wheat noodles to add complexity before a simple broth is even added. You are essentially seasoning from the inside out. Number 28. Cook noodles in broth instead of plain water. Why throw away flavor when you can build it in from the start? Chinese cooks, especially those making simple weeknight soups, will often cook their noodles directly in a light chicken or pork bone broth instead of water. The noodles absorb the savory liquid as they cook, which means even a plain bowl with no additional toppings tastes genuinely rich and satisfying. Use a mild broth so you do not overpower and reduce the amount of salt you would normally add since broth already carries sodium. This works especially well with thin wheat noodles and glass noodles. Number 27. Use a chopstick to prevent boiling over. You have probably seen your pot of noodles start to foam up and boil over the second you turn away. Here's the Chinese solution that requires zero technology. Rest a single wooden chopstick across the top of the pot before it reaches a boil. The chopstick disrupts the surface tension of the rising foam and causes it to break apart before it can spill over the edge. Wood does not conduct heat, so it stays in place without burning. A wooden spoon works too, but a chopstick is slimmer, less intrusive, and honestly just more elegant. This trick alone will save you from cleaning your stovetop so many times. Number 26. Pull noodles by hand for better texture. Hand-pulling noodles, called la mian in Chinese, sounds intimidating, but the basic principle is something anyone can apply at home without being a trained chef. When you stretch noodle dough by hand rather than cutting it, you are aligning the gluten strands in one direction. This creates a noodle that has a springier, more resilient bite and holds up better in hot broth without falling apart. You do not need to do the full dramatic overhead pull you see on videos. Simply stretch your dough ropes gently between your hands 2 or 3 times before dropping them in water and you will notice the difference in texture immediately. Number 25. Add a splash of vinegar to your cooking water. This is a trick Chinese cooks use specifically when making rice noodles or glass noodles. A small splash of rice vinegar, about 1 tablespoon per large pot, added to the boiling water helps firm up the noodle structure during cooking. The mild acidity reacts with the starches in the noodle and prevents them from becoming overly soft or sticky. The vinegar smell cooks off completely so there is no residual sour taste. Your noodles come out cleaner, more separated, and with a better overall texture that holds up when you toss them with sauce or stir-fry them. Number 24. Soak instead of boil for certain noodles. Not every noodle needs a pot of boiling water. Chinese cooks know that glass noodles, thin rice vermicelli, and certain flat-dried rice noodles actually do better when soaked in room temperature or warm water for 15 to 30 minutes instead of boiled. Boiling these noodles often makes them gummy and overcooked on the outside before they are fully hydrated inside. Soaking lets the water penetrate gradually and evenly, giving you a noodle that is perfectly tender all the way through. Once soaked, you can finish them in a hot wok for 60 seconds if you want them fully cooked, or use them directly in cold dishes. Number 23. Reserve your noodle water as a sauce thickener. Just like Italian cooks save pasta water, Chinese cooks have their own version of this trick, but with a twist. The starchy water left from cooking fresh wheat noodles or egg noodles is incredibly thick and slightly gelatinous. Keep a cup of it before draining. When you toss your noodles with a sauce that is too thick or a seasoning paste that is too concentrated, adding a splash of this starchy water loosens everything up while binding the sauce to each strand simultaneously. It acts as a natural thickener and emulsifier at the same time, giving you that glossy restaurant-quality coating you can never quite achieve at home otherwise. Number 22. Freeze your noodles before cooking for a chewier bite. This sounds counterintuitive, but Chinese people have used this technique for decades, particularly with fresh egg noodles and handmade wheat noodles. After you make or buy fresh noodles, dust them with flour, portion them into bundles, and freeze them for at least 2 hours before cooking. When frozen noodles hit boiling water, the ice crystals that formed inside the dough create tiny pockets as they melt, which gives the finished noodle a slightly airy, chewy interior texture that is noticeably different from cooking fresh. It is the same principle behind why some breads and doughs benefit from a cold ferment. Number 21. Use sesame oil as a finishing coat, not a cooking oil. This is one of the most misunderstood noodle tricks in Chinese cooking, and it matters enormously. Sesame oil has a very low smoke point, and its flavor compounds are highly volatile, which means the moment it hits a hot pan, all of that gorgeous nutty aroma burns off and disappears. Chinese cooks never use sesame oil for stir-frying noodles. Instead, they drizzle it over the finished bowl right before serving. Just half a teaspoon swirled over hot noodles delivers an incredibly fragrant, rich aroma that makes the entire dish smell and taste like it came from a serious restaurant kitchen. Number 20. Create a cold water bath layering trick for noodle salads. When Chinese home cooks are making cold noodle dishes in summer, they do not just rinse their noodles and toss them together. They layer ice cubes at the bottom of a large bowl, place a colander on top, and drain the hot noodles through the colander, so the melting ice water continuously rinses from below. This gets the noodles colder faster than running them under a tap, and the continuous flow of cold water washes away far more surface starch. The result is noodles that are chilled to the core, completely separated, and have a firm snap when you bite into them. If tricks like this are the kind of thing you want more of, I put over 900 of them into one place, the Complete Chinese Kitchen Bible. Links in the description. Now let's talk about frying. Number 19. Score your noodle cake before frying. If you have ever attempted pan-fried noodles in a crispy cake style, which is a classic technique in Chinese cooking, you know how frustrating it can be when the cake falls apart or does not cook evenly. The trick is to take your pre-boiled and drained noodle portion and use a chopstick or the back of a knife to press shallow channels into the surface before placing it in the pan. These channels allow heat to travel more evenly through the cake, reduce steam buildup in the center, and create more surface area contact with the oil, which means you get an evenly golden, shatteringly crispy crust without a raw middle. Number 18. Add baking soda to your water for ramen-style noodles. This is the secret behind why restaurant ramen noodles have that distinctive yellow color, firm bite, and slightly alkaline taste that regular boiled noodles just do not have. Chinese and Japanese noodle makers traditionally used a substance called kansui, which is an alkaline mineral water. At home, you can replicate this by adding about 1 teaspoon of baking soda per quart of water when boiling plain wheat noodles. The alkaline environment changes the pH of the noodle's surface, strengthens the gluten network, and gives you a noticeably firmer, springier texture with that characteristic chew. This works best with thinner wheat noodles. Number 17. Use a wide, shallow pan instead of a tall pot for stir-fried noodles. Chinese wok cooking is famous for its high heat and efficiency, and the pan shape is a huge part of why it works so well. When you stir-fry noodles in a narrow, tall pot, steam gets trapped, the noodles steam rather than fry, and you end up with a soggy mess. Use the widest, shallowest pan you have and make sure it is screaming hot before the noodles go in. The wide surface area lets moisture evaporate instantly, which is how Chinese cooks get that slightly charred, dry, intensely savory quality in their noodle dishes. Even a large skillet at high heat works far better than a deep pot. Number 16. Blooming your spices in oil before adding noodles. Before you add noodles to a pan, Chinese cooks always start by heating oil and adding aromatics like garlic, ginger, dried chili flakes, or scallion whites. They let these ingredients sizzle and bloom in the oil for about 30 to 60 seconds before anything else goes in. This step is not just about softening aromatics. Heat causes the fat-soluble flavor compounds in spices to dissolve into the oil itself, which then coats every single strand of noodle when they are added. You cannot get this depth of flavor by adding spices at the end or stirring them into a sauce separately. The oil becomes the flavor delivery system. Number 15. Snap long noodles in half strategically. Long noodles in Chinese culture carry symbolic significance related to longevity, so Chinese people do not traditionally break them. However, in a practical home cooking context, Chinese cooks know that very long noodles tangle, cook unevenly, and are difficult to eat. The trick is not to snap them randomly, but to fold them into a bundle that fits your pot without fully breaking them, then fan them out as they soften in the water. This keeps the noodles straighter, helps them cook evenly without tangling into a clump, and makes them much easier to plate and portion afterward without a mess. Number 14. Make a cold sauce base and let it sit. For sauces meant to be served over cold or room temperature noodles, Chinese cooks never make the sauce right before serving. They mix their sauce anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours in advance and let it rest at room temperature. This resting time allows the soy sauce, sesame paste, vinegar, chili oil, and garlic to meld together and soften in flavor. Freshly made sauce has harsh, competing edges. A rested sauce tastes more cohesive, rounded, and balanced. The garlic loses its sharp bite, the sesame paste becomes silkier, and the whole thing comes together into something far more sophisticated. Number 13. Use ice water to wash starch off rice noodles specifically. With rice noodles, regular cold tap water is not always enough to stop clumping because rice starch behaves differently from wheat starch. Chinese cooks add actual ice cubes to a large bowl of water and submerge their freshly drained rice noodles directly in the ice bath for about 2 minutes. The extremely cold temperature causes the rice starch on the surface to contract and become almost glassy, which makes each noodle strand repel the others rather than stick to them. This is why rice noodle dishes in good Chinese restaurants always have that beautiful, separate, glistening look instead of being a tangled, starchy lump. Number 12. Season your oil separately before using it. This is a technique called making flavored oil, and Chinese cooks do it constantly. Instead of adding aromatics directly to your noodle pan, heat a small amount of neutral oil in a separate small pan. Add your garlic, ginger, or dried chilies, and let them infuse over low heat for 3 to 4 minutes without burning. Strain out the solids and use just the infused oil. This way, you get all of the flavor without any risk of burning the aromatics when the pan temperature spikes, and the oil carries that flavor more evenly throughout the entire dish than chunks of garlic ever could. Number 11. Understand the 2-stage cooking method for thick noodles. Chinese cooking distinguishes between noodles that need to be softened and noodles that need to develop texture. For thick wheat noodles or udon-style noodles, Chinese cooks boil them until about 70% cooked, drain them, then finish them in a very hot wok or pan with sauce for the final 30%. This 2-stage process is critical because the pan finishes the cooking while simultaneously searing the outside of the noodle, creating a slightly chewy exterior with a soft center, which is a textural complexity you absolutely cannot achieve by simply boiling all the way through and tossing with sauce after. Number 10. Add a raw egg yolk to dry noodle dough for richness. When Chinese home cooks make handmade noodles from scratch, they often add one extra egg yolk beyond what the recipe calls for. The additional yolk does two things. The extra fat makes the dough more pliable and easier to roll thin without tearing, and the additional protein in the yolk gives the cooked noodle a richer, slightly golden color and a more satisfying bite. This is especially useful when making thinner noodles that would otherwise feel too light and delicate. You do not need much. One extra yolk added to a 2-cup flour dough makes a noticeable difference in both texture and flavor. Number 9. Dry your noodles before frying to prevent oil splatter. If you have ever dropped wet noodles into hot oil and had it explode off the stove at you, this trick is for you. Chinese cooks who are deep frying or shallow frying noodles, such as when making crispy noodle nests for toppings, always spread their pair-boiled noodles on a clean towel or baking rack for at least 10 minutes to dry the surface before they go near hot oil. Even small amounts of surface water cause violent splattering when they hit oil above 300 degrees. Drying the surface completely eliminates this danger entirely and also gives you a crispier result because there is no steam being generated from within. Number 8. Toss noodles with oil immediately after draining. This is something Chinese people do instinctively, and it is one of the simplest, most effective tricks on this entire list. The moment you drain your cooked noodles, whether you are eating them right away or not, toss them with just a small drizzle of neutral oil while they are still hot. The heat helps the oil coat every strand evenly before the noodles can stick to each other. If you wait even 2 minutes, the surface starches begin bonding and you end up with a clump that tearing and pulling apart will damage. This takes about 5 seconds and completely solves the clumping problem, regardless of what type of noodle you are making. Number 7. Use the back of a spoon to create texture wells for sauce. When plating noodles in a bowl, Chinese cooks do not just dump them in and pour sauce on top. They use the back of a large spoon to press a shallow well into the center of the noodle mound before adding their sauce, chili oil, or toppings. This well acts as a reservoir that holds the sauce at the center of the bowl rather than letting it pool around the edges. As you eat, you naturally pull noodles from the outside toward the center, which means every bite encounters the concentrated sauce. It ensures you are not eating dry noodles from one side of the bowl and then drowning in sauce on the other. Number 6. Stretch glass noodles with scissors after soaking. After soaking glass noodles or bean thread noodles, they tend to come out in a somewhat compact, tightly coiled bundle. Chinese cooks grab the bundle and use kitchen scissors to make 4 or 5 cuts right through the center of the bundle in different directions, cutting the long strands into shorter, more manageable lengths. This is done while the noodles are still in the soaking bowl. The shorter lengths are far easier to eat. They absorb sauce more efficiently because there is more exposed end surface area, and they distribute more evenly throughout a dish, whether you're making a cold salad, a hot stir-fry, or adding them to soup. Number 5. Control your oil temperature with a wooden chopstick test. This is a Chinese kitchen essential that requires no thermometer whatsoever. Before adding noodles or aromatics to oil for frying, dip the tip of a dry wooden chopstick into the oil. If you see no bubbles, the oil is not ready. Small lazy bubbles mean the oil is warm but not hot enough. A rapid, vigorous stream of bubbles rising continuously from the chopstick tip means the oil is at the right temperature for frying, typically around 350 to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. This trick is used throughout Chinese professional kitchens and home kitchens alike because it is faster, more reliable for visual cooks, and requires zero equipment beyond what you already have. Number 4. Build your heat in stages for wok hei flavor. Wok hei is the term Chinese cooks use for that smoky, slightly charred, deeply savory quality that you get from Chinese restaurant noodle dishes but almost never achieve at home. The secret is not just temperature, it is staging. Heat your pan empty until it starts to smoke slightly. Add oil and swirl to coat. Let the oil heat for another 15 seconds. Then add aromatics and move quickly. Then add your pre-cooked noodles in a single layer and press them against the surface for 30 full seconds without stirring before tossing. That prolonged contact with the screaming hot surface is what creates the caramelization and slight char that is the entire foundation of wok hei. Patience in those 30 seconds is everything. Number 3. Mix your sauce directly in the empty bowl before noodles go in. This is a technique you will see in Chinese noodle shops all over China, and it works brilliantly for home cooking too. Rather than making sauce separately in a small bowl or pot, add all of your liquid seasonings, your soy sauce, vinegar, sesame oil, chili paste, and sugar directly to the serving bowl and mix them together. Then add your freshly drained, still very hot noodles directly on top. The heat from the noodles warms the sauce instantly, and as you toss everything together in the bowl, the sauce coats the noodles from every angle simultaneously. There is less washing up, better coating, and the whole process is faster than any other method. Number 2. Make chili oil with texture for the ultimate noodle topping. Store-bought chili oil is convenient, but Chinese home cooks make their own version with a specific technique that creates something far superior, and it is simpler than you think. Heat neutral oil until it is nearly smoking, around 400 degrees. In a heat-proof bowl, combine dried chili flakes, toasted sesame seeds, a pinch of salt, a pinch of sugar, and a small amount of 5-spice powder. Pour the screaming hot oil directly over the dry ingredients all at once. You will hear a dramatic sizzle. The extreme heat blooms all of the chili and spice compounds instantaneously in a way that slow frying never achieves. The result is an intensely fragrant, deeply red, slightly sweet chili oil with crispy texture that transforms any bowl of plain noodles into something extraordinary. Chinese people pour this on everything from plain boiled noodles to dumplings to rice. Number 1. Master the 30-second noodle refresh trick. This is the single most practical and transformative noodle trick that Chinese cooks use on a daily basis, and it will change how you handle leftovers forever. When you have leftover cooked noodles in the fridge that have stuck together into a cold, gummy, unappetizing brick, do not microwave them. Do not add water and try to stir them apart cold. Instead, bring a small pot of water to a boil. Drop the cold noodle brick in for exactly 30 seconds, then immediately drain and toss with a drizzle of oil. In 30 seconds, the heat rehydrates the surface, separates every strand, and restores the original springy texture as if they were freshly cooked. This is a staple move in Chinese home kitchens, and it works for every single type of noodle, from rice vermicelli to thick wheat noodles to egg noodles. The difference between microwaved leftover noodles and this method is genuinely night and day. Everything in this video and 900 plus more is in the Complete Chinese Kitchen Bible. Links in the description if you want the whole set.